Now, you started working in Prisoner in 1983, is that correct?
82.
82? Okay. Now, this is after the program went from one hour per week to 2 hours per week.
Yes.
Okay.
I was certainly very much entrenched in the 2 hour a week slot when I joined it. Yeah.
Major cast changes occurred, but shortly after your arrival, some of the remaining characters left also. Did you find this new influx of characters, plus the departures, a negative or positive influence on the storylines? And was the public feedback, if any, positive?
I think in a long-running series such as Prisoner, changes have to be made from time to time, either for personal reasons of the performer or policy reasons of the producer. Certainly there were some of the old characters in the show when I joined it, and then subsequently in the 4.5 years that followed, newer characters came in. There were some that I didn't particularly think were very believable. I thought there were moments towards the end of the show, towards the end of the run, where it got to be a little too fantastic, with the appearance of people, really, the mixing of alleged people, alleged sentenced people and alleged, what do you call them, remand people. The presence of glamorous gowns and makeup I thought was somewhat far-fetched, although in modern prisons women thankfully are allowed to have some of the niceties of life. You know, they are allowed to have their nail polish and their lipstick, if only as a bit of a morale booster.
These are Australian prisons you're talking about?
That's what I'm talking about. I think that the storylines held fairly well. Every long-running series has its ups and downs, and then suddenly, you know, it sort of coasts along a little bit, and then people think it's getting a little dull, and then a bit of new life is injected into it. I think it held up remarkably well for 8 years, you know, given the ups and downs.
Okay. Now, I read somewhere that when you first joined Prisoner, you were just as petrified about your character as the prisoners were of you.
I think I was more petrified of the medium. Prior to Prisoner, I'd had some 20-odd years in the theatre, and I'd never done a long-running television series. I'd had a few guest appearances here and there, and a few small parts in film. But to suddenly find myself thrown in at the deep end with a very difficult character, and B, the hard slog of 2 hours a week, you know, which is like a 60, 70-hour week, I found it quite terrifying. In fact, there's a very funny story about my very first day on the set. That the stillness, you know, critics and public alike always found that, and the other actors found the stillness of Ferguson to be the very threatening thing. Now, part of that was by design, but I'd say 75% of it was fear in the first couple of episodes. So that was established, and it was something that I was looking for. I was looking for a threatening stillness because I'm a very tall person, and that no, we can't have a busy, fussy person. That quiet, threatening manner is much more effective. Basing it a little on a character in a 1950 movie called Caged. An actress by the name of Hope Emerson played a particularly nasty prison officer, and she was a very big woman, and I still have a picture of her in my mind with this stillness. She was like a great grey battleship sailing through the prison, but this quiet, stealthy, threatening persona. So there you have it, you know, it's 25% by design and 75% fear caused the stillness.
Okay. So it was based on some other character, or did you incorporate anybody that you know?
Not very consciously, and it certainly was not based on any on anybody I had ever met.
Okay.
I understand that the writers had based it on a composite of some characters here in the prison system, given their information and research from former prisoners. But I certainly didn't ever meet anybody like that. Although during the run of the show I met a woman, she was actually I think one of the longest serving prisoners in New South Wales, and she was brought in as a researcher or an advisor on the Halfway House story. And I had occasion to meet this lady, and I was pretty scared of meeting her, I can assure you. And she shook my hand and said, "You're spot on, lady." So I thought, well, I've got the seal of approval from someone who knows. And she did tell me that she had actually been under the care, if that's the word, of a woman just like Ferguson. But she had in fact also been under the guidance of a woman just like Meg Morris, who encouraged her to study and do her psychology courses and philosophy courses and whatever that she subsequently did to rehabilitate herself. So I guess the Fergusons and the Morrises really do exist.
So it is divided then?
Yeah, well, well, there's good and bad everywhere, you know. Yeah. Good and bad in public service offices, you know, in retail shops. You know, the Fergusons and the Morrises are all over the world, you know, in all sorts of guises.
Yeah. Basically, Joan Ferguson initially wasn't she was still in the guidelines of the prison.
Oh, her whole credo,
or?
her whole credo was everything by the book. You know, and that's why one could never really argue with a portrayal of a person like that, because there are people like that, either in the prison system or in whoever, they may have positions of authority. They're fiercely ambitious and they do everything by the book. They're totally unbending, with no compassion, no flexibility in their outlook at all. And that, I think, is the sadness of Ferguson. That she was so unbending, but because she believed she was right. She believed she was right, yes. But I mean, really, after all, we are talking about television. We're not talking about world politics.
Okay.
We're talking about entertainment, you know. That's one of the things about a television show dealing with prison life. The one thing that you can't show, or is very difficult to show, is the abject boredom. So if a series like Prisoner seems a little far-fetched from time to time to purists, if anybody who wants to watch television, they must be purists. I mean, to me it's just an escape, it's entertainment. Then, you know, anything that was perhaps exaggerated in the show, you would look at as being an alternative to showing boredom, which is what makes up 75% of prison life. Abject boredom. I mean, it's a hideous thing to be deprived of your freedom. And there's nothing exciting or dramatic about it at all. It boils down to loss of privacy, loss of privilege, loss of human rights, and loss of interest. Therefore, terribly boring.
Even with the outlook that the prisons have now, with the Meg Jacksons that are in the real prisons in Australia, with the training and the education,
they might be in the prisons, but they don't run the prisons. Certainly not in New South Wales. They are not in the Department of Corrective Services.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay.
This seems to be a state where the prison system is based on retribution, not rehabilitation. Same as it was 200 years ago, and that's a shocking indictment.
Yeah.
Shocking indictment.